And I held her hand and I said, I love you, I love you, I love you. And she just opened her eyes and she said, I love you, Mum. And she went to sleep. But I am completely lost without him.
Are you angry?
At him?
At the universe? God? Him?
To have been loved by you is enough for a million lifetimes.
Fuck.
I know.
Jesus, God damn it. Before we start the episode, I just want to say thank you to Graham's Windows and Doors at grahamswindowsanddoors.co.uk, Yeovil's finest purveyor of windows, doors and conservatories. James and Sherelle, we're so glad to have you on board. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. We really, really appreciate it. So get yourself to grahamswindowsanddoors.co.uk. Now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Steve Kalish Show. I'm Steve Kalish and I'm joined as usual by co-host Lissy Jane. Lissy, are you okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, good. And we're joined by a very special guest and a returning guest to the Steve Kalish Show, Di Goddard. Di, how are you doing?
Hi, Steve. Hi, Lissy. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's really, really good to see you again.
Good.
It's nice to have you on the podcast because my fiancée doesn't listen to the podcast.
Oh.
And even though one day it'll be our bread and butter, so I wish every now and then she'd tune in just for one. but the few she has listened to, her absolute favourite episode is our last one we did together.
2019.
Yeah, because we had a really good conversation. You called me out on all my bad qualities.
You brought a glass of wine to the table and
was
I only
relaxing.
bought water. Yeah. We were on Zoom and I'm sipping water and suddenly
It was
Steve's like...
it was a stressful time.
It was a glass of red.
Away on wine.
Yeah, he got a
Nice.
lecture.
I like your style.
Yeah, but it was actually also very opening and thought provoking because we tapped into your knowledge of the mind a little bit, and it was just and it was lovely, really great.
We spoke a lot about hypnotherapy and the whole point of it and what my understanding was. And actually, I think I did give you some little life lessons.
You
I
did?
think you signed up for something you didn't know
I was
you
a
were going to
changed man
get.
the next day.
You literally were.
Yeah,
That's
and
why
it was.
Misha liked it.
Yeah, it was really great because at the time I was sort of a bit of a shambles. I was like just doing too many things, trying to be everything for everybody, and so you called me on that within
Yes, I
about
did.
4 minutes of knowing me on the show.
Literally. It was the wine that gave it away.
It was,
That's
yeah.
what it was.
It was Now you were very kind in what you just said to me, Lissy, off camera, and it makes our job a lot easier because actually approaching the subject that we're going to approach today is difficult, and it is just from a standpoint of you never know. And I'm fortunate that I've got some experience interviewing people who are experiencing grief, dealing with grief, and handling it in different ways. But it's never easy because it's so rare. And there is a part of you thinking, oh God, what if I get upset? What if I say something stupid? There's a whole host of faux pas that I will inevitably
Absolutely.
clumsily crash into. You know what I mean?
I'll pull you right into them. Don't worry. I'm going to line them up for you one by one, and you're just going to crash into them.
Yeah, I expect so. Yeah, and but you very kindly talked to us about that beforehand and relaxed me about it. And you've given us license to talk openly and freely about it, which is very rare because actually if you think it's a strange gift in a way, this sort of conversation, because it's nice. Because it's taboo and it's scary. Grief is scary. Death is scary. So you better talk openly about it. It's actually, in a macabre way, quite freeing. And it's, do you know what I mean?
I just find that one of the biggest things that gets me when anyone talks about grief and loss and death is that people walk on eggshells around you. They treat you differently. And yes, you are very much changed with death and with grief and with the process of perhaps, as I have with both my daughter and my husband, watched them get sicker and sicker and sicker and lose their lives. And people treat you differently. And I think this whole lack of conversation about grief and death is a big thing, and I think it's why we're so emotionally constipated in this country specifically about the stiff upper lip and the, oh my God, I better not upset her. And honestly, as the mother of a child who's passed away, as now a recent widow, having lost a huge amount of people in the last few years, my dad, My daughter Liana's best friend was killed 14 months after she died in a skiing accident. It's blow after blow after blow. And what I've noticed is that every time grief happens, you lose more people from your circle, that people treat you differently, that people are almost scared to come near you. Like, I understand that the common denominator in all this death is me.
Yeah.
Like, my friends have had real warning about,
Sure.
look, you know who you're hanging out with here. This ain't going to go very well for you. But actually, the people that have stuck by me and the people that have connected and been the scaffolding that holds all of the broken to shit parts of my heart, even near my chest, they don't hold back, because they understand that if they start to treat me differently, then I feel even more different than I already do.
Yeah. And I do understand, because, like I said to you before, I would have been uncomfortable, I think, in a social setting, because there's, like I said, there's landmines, social landmines you don't want to trip up on, and I would have been very conscious of that. Yeah. But in this setting where we're addressing it and we're open and the topic is it's very comfortable. I can talk about it. But I think if we were going to say, hey, let's go for a coffee and talk about anything else, I would have forgotten what words are and not been able to talk properly about anything. Do you know what I mean?
I do understand completely, but I think we need to just get one thing out on the slightly sticky table.
I don't know how to unsticky it.
Okay.
I've been cleaning it for 3 days. It's the stickiest. I don't know how to unsticky my
What do you do
table.
out here? It's fine. I think that the thing that we need to get out there is that we're all going to die. It's just that most of us don't believe it. And so what my understanding of death and grief and loss is that the more you accept it's going to happen, the better the quality of life you live. And I ask people quite often when I talk about loss and death and grief is, if you really understand that you too are going to die, then maybe you would live a less diluted life. And that sounds like a really weird thing to say, and perhaps I haven't phrased it properly. But I think we just go, oh, no. Death happens to other people. There's this glass wall between me and the neighbour down the street whose cat got run over, or whose brother died, or the old schoolmate that I heard of, but I haven't actually seen them for 25 years. So I can put that over there in a box, and there's a wall between me and them. And ultimately, it's doing that means that we think, well, I'm going to live forever. So the thing I was going to do, I'll put it off till another day. And we hear story. I mean, as a hypnotherapist, a majority of the clients that I see in my office, if I ask them what their biggest fear is, the answer is death. They're scared of dying. And that's like a control thing. Like, that's being a control. I'm a control freak. And you have to relinquish control, because you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to die before this podcast goes out, or I don't know if I'm going to live till I'm 104.
We'll get some serious listeners if you do.
I mean, ultimately, there's a posthumous thing, that could happen right there, but I want royalties from that one. But I think ultimately we assume we're going to live forever and that death happens to everybody else. And then, therefore, sometimes it leads people to not live full, authentic lives. And I know that about the people that I've lost, because what they knew when their death was coming was that they had an opportunity to say what they needed to say, do what they needed to do, laugh, love, live better. And therefore their life was good.
I suppose there must be something suddenly becoming unbound by expectation, ambition, all these, or fear is happening. So I suppose, because I'm afraid of death, but only since.
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of leaving my son,
Okay.
fatherless,
Okay.
and because I feel that without him, we've got the same brain, he and I. I'm very worried he's got my exact brain duplicated in him.
Okay,
and
kid.
fatherless. Exactly. And fatherless, he would be in real trouble, I think. The
So
same way I
you're
was.
trying to control a situation that's uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And then because of that, you're living in fear. So now
Yeah.
your fear is, what if I leave my son? What if I'm not here for
Yeah.
Misha? What if I'm not the provider?
And
What if I'm not...
their grief is the thing
Yeah.
that haunts me, I think.
My husband, and I'm going to be really honest with you now, Jason, he died 5 months ago on the 5th of May this year, having had a incredibly hard 2-year, I won't use the word battle because he hated that word. It wasn't a battle. It was he was strong enough. He said, like, he doesn't like the word battle because the cancer was in him. And so therefore, if I'm fighting the cancer, I'm fighting myself.
Sure.
You know, if the cancer kills me, it kills itself. He had a very holistic attitude to it. So he was very accepting of his situation.
Wow.
His only fear, and the reason I can tell you this is because he and I talked about it so openly in the last 2 years of his life. He had no fear of cancer. He had no fear of death. His only fear, and this fear of leaving me on my own, knowing that I've lost a child, that I'd lost my dad, that our family is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that he was my safety. His only fear was leaving me. And Caitlin, you know, my daughter, his stepdaughter.
It is
And it's
terrifying.
a big, real thing.
Yeah.
But actually, that even controlled his cancer journey, his fear. And it made me cross because he continued treatment up to the morning of the day he died because he refused to stop treatment, even though he had been asked by the consultants and the nurses for 4 days to stop treatment. Because the whole time you're on active cancer treatment, you're not getting palliative care, which is a really good amount of painkillers and a really good amount of anti-anxiety meds. Morphine, midazolam through the syringe driver, which I kept calling a drill driver, like they'd put a drill driver in his stomach. And they kept asking him to stop treatment because he was dying. And if he stopped treatment, he could come home and have time with the family. And on the Friday night, he said to the nurse, I heard him say it, I think he was off his what's-its on morphine. And he said, I can't leave my wife, so I have to continue treatment.
Yeah.
And that made me really cross because now you're in pain and suffering because you think, I can't do this life.
Yeah.
And I literally had to say to him, you need to stop treatment. And he still wouldn't listen. And the night before, so 24 hours before he died, the nurses came in again and they were sat with us and they said, look, Jason, tomorrow when the consultant comes in, we're going to sit with Di and we're going to let her make that decision because we don't feel that you're making the correct decision for yourself. And in that moment, I decided that wasn't happening. So he was very drowsy. And so I shook his hand. I literally stirred him and said, Jason, look at me. You're being told you're dying, and how you die is determined by your decision to stop treatment or not. And if you stop treatment, the pain will go. And he just said, okay, I'll do it. And he stopped treatment and died very quickly. And how much of those last few days of his life were agony because of his fear of leaving me? That's a big responsibility for me to have.
Oh, you got me.
There you go. Do you want, sorry. First tissue of the night. Okay. It's clean.
I was determined to hold out to at least go second. Jesus.
But it's all right. I'll go
Well,
last.
let me just, I'm being silly because I get uncomfortable and emotional, but
all right.
that's a very powerful, poignant point. And
Fear leads
well
you
served.
to do.
Yeah.
Fear leads you to do things that don't always serve you well,
Yeah,
and that don't always serve the people around you well.
Yeah, you served my point straight back at me.
Yes,
And,
I will
very
continue
well.
to do
Yeah, you're
that
very good at
throughout
that.
the whole evening. Don't you worry.
So how did you feel in that moment when he said that? Did you feel relief, or did you feel that
completely, because ultimately you can. So, for example, when Liana was sick, my daughter was sick. She got ill when she was 18 on a gap year in Africa, and shouldn't have survived, but lived another 4.5 years, and through those 4.5 years, fought in hospital continually to stay alive.
Yeah.
And watching her do that. People often say to me, is losing your child the hardest thing you've ever experienced? And my answer to that would be, no, watching her try and stay alive was harder.
Because she was suffering.
Completely. And when she went onto life support for the last time, because she'd had complications of her kidney transplant, and she had acute kidney rejection. And in order to get that kidney back, which is all she wanted, she always said, I will never go back on dialysis. Don't ever make me do that, Mum. For some people, dialysis is a really great thing and they come away feeling great, but Liana didn't. And the understanding was that for 4.5 years, she tried her hardest, but I'd watched her do that. And it was bruising and brutal. And on 3 other occasions, she'd been on life support and I'd been told that perhaps she wouldn't pull through. And actually, the last time that she went onto life support, she asked to go onto life support. She was losing her lungs. She couldn't breathe, which was causing her to panic because the infection that she'd caught while she was an inpatient in hospital had gone to her lungs. She had CMV, cytomegalovirus, and it had gone to her lungs. So CMV pneumonitis is always fatal in immunocompromised patients. I Googled that.
Hey, well, now we know.
Don't ever fucking Google shit like that. No. Excuse my French. Don't ever Google shit like that when your daughter's on life support with CMV pneumonitis, because you're always going to get the worst case scenario.
Right.
But ultimately, she said, I need to sleep. She wasn't scared of death. She wasn't scared of dying. She was scared of pain. So when she went to sleep and they put the milky stuff in her drip, there was a sense of relief in the room. And I remember thinking, oh, crap, this is the last time. And again, there's a lot of handshaking going on. I held her hand and I said, I love you, I love you, I love you. And she just opened her eyes and she said, I love you, Mum. And she went to sleep. I'm only trying to take her down as well now.
Oh, Jesus, got me twice.
And the reason I'm telling you that is because there was a huge acceptance for her that this life wasn't serving her well.
No.
And the 2 weeks that she spent on life support, I'm going to say this, but I perhaps don't mean what you might feel, but I fought for them to switch her life support off. And I didn't mean I was in, like you see these court cases on the telly. That's not what I'm talking about. But every day I slept in Southmead Hospital in a little room on a mattress on the floor. And every day I'd go in and say, I think she's had enough now. Oh, no, there's a 10% chance she'll get through this. Yes, but she'll have a tracheostomy. Yes, but she'll lose her kidney. And we had a deal, her and I. And I told her I would never make her live a life that wasn't a life that was good. And so I remember saying to her, probably about 48 hours before she died, I remember climbing onto the bed with her. I was there a lot of the time on my own with her because infection control, and this was pre-COVID, but there was still a lot of issues with, keeping her safe. And my husband and Liana's sister, my daughter, they had full-on head colds. So for a week, they weren't allowed anywhere near us. And I remember getting on the bed with her one day, and she was on life support. She was asleep. She was completely asleep, but she knew I was there. And I remember saying to her, I can do this without you. And I remember feeling that if she leaves, I can take the pain because she no longer has to. And that's not heroic. That's not me trying to sound like, look at me, aren't I bloody amazing? That was a private conversation between her and I. And I said to her, it's time to stop the madness. And she controlled everything. Even though she was on life support, she controlled everything. And she had had enough. I've sort of brought the vibe down so much I can't even remember what this whole conversation was about.
No, I asked
I'm
you,
locked
did
in.
you seek comfort in that decision from Jason, almost and transferable to Liana as well, saying, I can't suffer anymore.
Completely.
That was a lovely, very full answer.
You're always going to get that from me, Steve.
Yeah, good.
But ultimately, how long do you have to watch someone suffer? I remember saying to Liana's consultant, you wouldn't let me treat my dog like this. Yeah. I'd be done by the RSPCA for dragging it out and making it live a life that wasn't worth living. But because it's a human being and their value is so much more than a dog or a cat or whatever, we have to fight until the nth degree. And she didn't want that. She didn't want that. And actually, was there an element of relief in that madness stopping? Yeah. Because I'd spent 4.5 years watching my kid emaciatingly thin, unable to digest food, on dialysis, 16-hour operation in London that no one, even her professor, knew how she got through. rebuilding, and all she did was fight back. All she did was teach. All she did was, she never said, why me? Everything about her was, she was my hero. And then I think the acceptance is that her piece meant that I had to learn a new way. And then going through it again with Jason, well, that was just rude.
Yeah. Well,
that was a bit fucking brutal. I've spent 7 years looking after people that are sick just to have them die anyway.
Well,
but there's lessons there, you know?
Well, I was going to ask you about that,
yeah.
to be fair. And it's a strange question, I suppose. But this is what occurred to me when you first reached out. When you're grieving for your husband,
yeah,
where does the other grief go? Or does it coexist?
Oh, so let me tell you all about that one. So I was naive as shit to think that because I'd lost my child, nothing could ever take me down. Right. And I've spent the last 9.5 years, or 9 years that Liana had passed away, people asking me, how do you do it? And I was doing this bullshit sentence that said, I take my pain and I stand on top of it and I beat my chest at the world and I say, come on then, what are you going to do now? Because you're not going to take me down now. You've taken my kid. The only way you're going to take me down now is to take my other child. And believe me, I have her on I was going to call it Find My iPhone, but it's more like Find My Child. Yeah. And she lives in the house next door to me, but I have her on Find My iPhone because I still go, where are you? Because I believe when she drives to Bristol for work or when she goes away on holiday that she won't come home. And you can't say, oh, don't worry, Dad, that won't happen. Yeah. Because people spent years saying that. But I think I've lost my train of thought.
So when you lost your husband,
yeah,
the grief for your daughter,
for Liana,
do they coexist or do they?
So this grief for Liana was huge. People say grief comes in waves. It comes in dirty, great tsunamis, and it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter what you try and do to run away from the grief. It waits for you. Yeah. And I seriously thought that I've lost a kid and nothing will ever take me down again. And then I lost my husband. And I didn't know that would do the same thing. Yeah. I genuinely thought, well, the loss of a child is the biggest thing. And people say like, oh, I couldn't imagine. Well, you could. You don't want to think about it. But actually, the loss of my husband is completely different and equally as enormous, because while losing a child is so incredibly abnormal in any sense of the conversation, my husband was my future. Like, I didn't expect to get old with my child. I expected her to find her own family, find her own love, have her own family. You lose different things. So when I lost a child, I didn't lose her. When you lose something, it's because you're careless and you take your eyes off the ball, and I didn't do that. I didn't do that at all. But when she left, I didn't just lose my child. I lost the madness and chaos that girl brought to my life, the laughter. I lost the potential for grandchildren. She always wanted 6. And so I didn't just lose my daughter, I lost all of my grandchildren. I lost what I thought my future would be. With losing Jason, I've become more vulnerable. And I'm a savvy woman. Like, I'm a capable person. Yeah. I'm someone who will work hard and pay her own way. I owned a property before I met my husband. I've paid my own bills. I'm not one of these poor me, I don't know how to function without my husband. But actually, every time somebody has died in the last 20 years, my husband has just gone, it's okay, babe. We're going to do this together. And now he's fucked off. And I'm like, right. Nice one. Okay, now I'm really on my own. And I have like this huge gaggle of girlfriends. And I have, my youngest daughter, good God, she bought the house next door 2 years ago. And that was one of Jason's biggest joys before he died. That when he was ill, he saw Caitlin and her fiance move in next door, buy the house next door. So I couldn't get any more love around me if I tried. But I am completely lost without him.
Are you angry
At him?
At the universe, God, him.
I'm not going to say why me. Don't you dare make me cry. There's your answer. I feel like I've had a few too many belly blows. Yeah. Enough now. But I thought that before Jason died, and I'm not a why me, this is awful, poor me person at all. I will make the best of any situation. And like the losses I've experienced through my life have only made me a better person. I'm definitely a better hypnotherapist because of the losses I've experienced. I'm definitely a better person. I love deeper. I laugh harder. Way too loud. Jay used to spend his whole life going, shh, stop laughing so loud. Bloody hell, I'm so sorry about my wife, everybody. She's so loud. But this anger that people say, anger is one of the stages of grief. And actually, the 5 stages of grief model wasn't written for people that have died. It was written for people that were dying to explain to them how they process. So the whole myth of the 5 stages of grief, I don't sort of buy into it because, yes, you can be angry. Yes, you can be bargaining. Yes, you can be accepting. Yes, you can be in denial. Yes, you can whatever. But there's a billion other feelings in between. So do I feel angry? Yeah, I do. But not because it's a stage of grief, but because I'm scared. Revelation of the day, just work that one out.
That's okay. So what are you...
Thanks for that therapy. Don't charge me by the hour because I swear to God.
That's okay.
I used to go and see
I was a changed man after
I used to go to see a psychologist, and after Liana died, I used to see her all the time for therapy. She was amazing. And then she retired, and I was thinking, like, is she retired because I completely killed her career?
You'd be so difficult, I think, to counsel in that you just already know. You know what I'm going to say. So I suppose sometimes you would just need a sounding board, I suppose. But I don't imagine there's anyone who could help you explore parts of your brain you haven't already trodden. You know what I mean?
And I think grief is so personal to the individual. And actually, I had a hypnotherapist friend of mine that very early on in my hypnotherapy career said to me, I'd love to do some work with you one day. Let's do the Liana bit. Let me help you process your grief. My answer to that in my head was, so unless you can bring my daughter back into the room, you can't help me. I can have all the counselling in the world and people can give me all the love in the world and I'd still go, yeah, but she's still not here, is she? And I'm like that again with Jason, where I'm like, people are so loving and people are so kind. And honestly, my girlfriends, they literally moved in to my home. One of them's still staying there. They enveloped me in this sense of love, and yet every time I looked at their faces, what I could see was how heartbroken they were, that they were having to watch their friend go through another loss. And so they've held my shit together, and without them I would be so angry with the world that I would be an unsafe place to be.
I wondered if, when I was thinking about this interview today, and this is just me being honest, because you said that, we could be honest about this sort of thing.
Do I kill my family? I don't know. You're like, is there something you're doing that we need to know about, Di? No. I like the way you've put me on this side of the room so I can't escape after I've killed you all. She won't get out, officer. We've got her in.
Oh, Christ.
Okay, go on.
No, not quite where I was going.
Be honest. Be honest. Go on.
Oh, yeah.
Completely freaked out.
So you were talking about your friends, and you could see in their faces their hurt for you.
Yes.
And I imagine that's common for people who are dealing with grief, because you, in yourself, when considering this episode, it makes you consider, oh, Christ, what would I do if I lost Misha? Christ, what would I do if I lost Leah?
Yes.
And it's awful.
I'm a big sign that says to everyone, people are going to die. In fact, I had this conversation with my friends in the garden. We were all sat in a group, and we were all just sat around, because the week Jason died was the hottest week of this year. He died on the 7th of May. In that week, we had the Aurora Borealis randomly appear, which of course was him. And we had the hottest week of this year. I think the only week of sunshine we've had this year.
Yeah.
So everyone congregated at my house. We were sat around the garden table. You know, people were making buckets of tea. My friends were the reason my cats got fed. They were the reason that I stayed hydrated and didn't shrivel up like a prune. They were the reason that cleaning got done. They were the reason that these 747 bouquets of flowers that arrived at my doorstep didn't get left on the doorstep. But we had so many conversations in that garden. And on one of them, I said, because I think grief is sometimes quite funny, is it like an eye-opener that we're all sat here and I know I've lost my daughter, I've lost my dad, I've lost my husband, and so many other people, as we all lose lots of people. But there are people you expect to lose, like grandparents and great-grandparents and great aunts and uncles and things like that, and old school teachers and things like that. But there are people you don't expect to lose quite just yet. And everyone was sat around and they're all in couple relationships. I'm like the bully no-mates of the group. And you'd think all this death would make me a size 8, but it still hasn't done that. And actually, it's because I keep eating people. And actually, that was a pre-show joke. Can I just say that? Yeah. Honestly. But I would say random things like that, sat around this table to my friends. And I'd be like, well, you think I'd be a fucking size 8 by now, don't you? Can't even do that. And and we had this open conversation where I said to them, like, in a minute, one of you's going to lose the other one first. One of you's going to lose the other one first.
Oh, Christ.
One of you. And I'm a really nice person to hang around.
Anyway, time to shoot off, Di. Thanks for dinner.
Okay. Anyway, they're like, she's grieving. She gets away with it.
Sure.
But if you realise that that's the truth, then aren't you going to be better in that relationship?
Yeah.
Like the gift that cancer kept giving, okay, was that sometimes, because Jay and I were completely different animals, so I was early to bed, he was always late to bed. We liked different music, we had different tastes in everything, so we invariably didn't watch the same TV stuff. So I might, I'm going to go to bed, babes, it's 8:30 at night, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to watch that. Yeah, all right, love, see you later. We work from home, we live together. Believe me, it wasn't for lack of seeing each other. What cancer gave me were those moments where I went to bed to watch telly because I thought, I've had a hard day. I've had 5 clients in the office today and I've took Jay to chemo and I've done that and I've done that and I've done that. And then what his journey gave me was the opportunity to be sat in bed. And the reason I say it like this is because this happens so many times. And for me to go, I'm going to go back downstairs and hug my husband. And I'd go back downstairs and go, all right, babes? He'd be like, you're not watching that? No, babes, I just want to see you. And I'd spend 2 hours sat there holding him and we'd talk. Now, people are so blasé in their relationships or their friendships. I'll do that later. We'll just go there another time. And, no, you go on your own to that. I can't be bothered. Oh, God, he's really pissing me off. And actually, what the understanding of loss, cancer, especially any illness that you experience to someone, if you don't take the gift of what that gives you, then you're living a diluted life. Because if you don't go through that and open your eyes, believe me when I say, I showed that man enough love to last everyone a lifetime. In fact, a friend wrote a comment on because someone's not dead unless you post it on social media, on my social media post that I've lost Jay, and I put a beautiful photo. It was the last photo we ever had together. And it was our hands interlocked with our wedding rings. On his hospital gown, he was asleep. And it was about 3 hours before he died. Yeah. And I always thought he had the most beautiful hands and I wanted to remember them. And I do remember them. And on the social media post that I put, it was just so you know, guys, you've all supported us for so long, but Jay has left. Somebody wrote, a really good friend that means so much to me, wrote something along the lines of, to have been loved by you is enough for 1 million lifetimes.
Fuck.
I know. Jesus, and I thought, do you know what? Yeah, because actually, Jay and I always had a lovely relationship. I mean, good God, everyone fights, everyone falls out, everyone argues, everyone gets too drunk and stuff like that. But we had a good relationship. We had a great relationship. When we lost Liana, our relationship got better. When we lost my dad, and it was Jason and my youngest daughter that found my dad when he'd passed away, our relationship got better. Not better because, yay, everything's great, but better because you understand the value of this moment right now. It was the reason that we were like, okay, we had a bit of a row, but we're not going to bed on that. Not because we thought one of us might not wake up in the morning, but because you learn the value. You love harder. And so when you say to me, gosh, it makes me sit and reflect. What if I lose Misha? I can't lose Misha. What the hell? Okay. So what are you going to change in your relationship so that Misha knows that when she does die, that she was the most loved person in the fucking universe, Steve? Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that. I'm not saying you don't love her well. I don't know. She didn't text me earlier,
Yeah. Well, I think we're lucky there in that I'm very passionate and affectionate.
Absolutely.
I never let a moment slip by for too long without grabbing her and fucking telling her I love her. And she allows me to love her that way. Yeah. And then she in return, fuck me, it feels comfortable loving me the way she wants to. Yeah. So we're good. That's why. Fucking hell, die.
It's okay. But this is really good for you. This is cathartic. Don't worry. I think ultimately, Jay and I were always very tactile. So we were the sort of couple that would, he worked from home. I have an office at home. So we were always at home together. We spent a lot of time together. When you go on a cancer journey with someone and you're there, carer, wasn't his carer, I was his wife, but I was the one that stuck needles in his bellies after bellies. Oh, because he had more than one. Oh, I get why he was saying that. But I was the one that got to stick needles in him. I was the one that made him food when he couldn't get out of bed. I was the one that drove him to chemo. I was the one that did those things. And never was it a burden. Never. If you don't understand the value of life, then you don't believe that you're going to die. The love that we had was always great. We had a great relationship. In fact, I'm going to be rude enough to say that many of my friends' relationship goals were me and Jay, because good God did we laugh. Good God were we funny together. I mean, he was my best friend. He still is. He was my sidekick. He used to say to me, "Oh, you think you're so funny." I'm like, "No, Jason, you think I'm funny. I know I'm funny." So let's just clear that up right now. We laughed about everything. His cancer consultant said, she literally said to us, if laughter and positivity were the cure for cancer, you would have knocked it out of the park within days. Wow. And we even used to laugh in the consultant's room. She said once, "I want to come and live with you guys. This is like so much fun." And we laughed about everything because we knew our time was limited. We knew that was coming. So what do you then take with you? Do you spend weeks sitting there whining and cry? I cried. Don't get me wrong. I cried at him, ashamedly.
Well, what is that like? Because what is that? Do you feel self-conscious about? Did you feel self-conscious about crying? Because I wonder if maybe you'd go, "Oh, blimey, no, he's got cancer. I'm crying at him."
I think Jay and I had this relationship where he knew more about me than me. So, I would get prickly about stuff, and he'd go, "Do you miss Liana?" And I'd be like, "Yes." He'd be like, "I know, I can feel it." So I think we were very emotive. We were very able to feel what each other was feeling. And there were times where 95% of the time I was like, "Let's do this. Come on, we're going to kick cancer's ass." And we did it, and we would find this positive stuff. But every now and then it's okay to sit there and say, "I can't live without you. Please don't die." And we, on many occasions, would lie in bed together and we would have these open conversations, and I would invariably be in tears, and I'd say to him, "I can't live without you." And he'd say to me, "Yes, you can, Di, and you'll do it really well." And I will never, ever stop looking after you, even when I'm not here. He had no issues with me, and he was so positive. He had no issues with me crying because he knew how scary it is. And he knew that he was my safety. And now I have to feel safe without him. And I'm a capable girl. You know, I'm a 51-year-old woman who has always worked hard, who's raised her children well. Obviously, I lost one of them, but, you know, that was a bit of a faux pas. I've always been a good friend. If I'm your friend, I'm a good friend. I would say if I'm your wife, I'm a good wife, but my first husband probably wouldn't say that. But I was a good wife. I'm a good mum. I'm a good person. And I'm very capable. So since Jay has died, I have challenged myself. You know, I took a flight a few weeks later to one of my best friends in Newcastle on our wedding anniversary on the 26th of August. I couldn't sit at home feeling sorry for myself, so I went to Bristol and got on a flight to Mallorca and spent 5 days on my own in Mallorca. Yeah. I've taken myself on a retreat down into a spiritual retreat down into Cornwall.
You've made some fucking.
I've spent the last 2 weeks in America. Yeah. I came home last week from America, so I flew out to see my niece in New York in the middle of September. And actually, I had a really challenging time, and I've learnt a lot about myself in the last couple of weeks. So I went out to stay with my niece in Brooklyn. And then I was staying with her for 4 days. And then I was meeting a friend who lives in London but works in New York. And he goes back and forward and has flown hundreds of times between work and home and work and home. And he was picking me up on the Monday night, and we were going for a few days to the Hamptons, where he works and lives in New York. And then we were going to fly down to see friends in Georgia. He didn't rock up. Had a few issues going on maybe at home, and he didn't rock up. So there's me in Brooklyn, in New York 2 weeks ago, like literally now, and I had to work that shit out. Now my niece wasn't going to abandon me. I could have stayed with her. He didn't know that. Anyway, there's a moral of the story here. So Jason controlled this as well, because our best friends live in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and I've avoided them completely. I've done the I can't see them, because if I see them and Jason's not there, then apparently that means he's dead, like he wasn't already. So it's like, oh, big flags. And actually I then arranged with them, and I took an internal flight from LaGuardia in Queens, which wasn't even near where I was. I flew into JFK. I took an internal flight from Queens down to Pittsburgh. I dealt with the pain of seeing them. We cried, and then I spent a week down in West Hills, Pennsylvania, jet skiing. I've never done that before. Visiting local places, being with friends that we love, having just a great time. And then I flew myself back home and drove myself home from Heathrow last Tuesday night and got in at 11 o'clock at night. And I'd put my big girl pants on. Yeah. And I realise now that I am safe, that I can keep myself safe. Yeah. I don't like it. That's the bit I'm angry about.
Sure.
But I can do these things. And I think sometimes you have to put yourself in positions where things feel uncomfortable. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. Okay. And this is a thing that all of my clients and I talk about. I'm not at work at the moment seeing one-to-one clients, because I've decided that preacher heal thyself is my mantra of this year. Sure. This isn't just about losing my husband, which on its own was a bit of a calamity. This is the layers of grief, and this now layer is something I have to now find my feet and learn about my next steps on my own. So I'm not yet back at work, but one of the things that comes up time and time and time again is that people are so scared of feeling angry, feeling sad, feeling fear, feeling anything. You know, we do everything. Oh, I feel anxious. I must stop feeling anxious. Oh God, I feel stressed. I've got to stop that. I need to see someone. I need to get rid of it. Grief is like the big one. Nobody wants to feel grief. Nobody wants to feel sadness and pain and the agony. It's debilitating. Grief is like someone taking a baseball bat into your rib cage and you are just doubled over. It's painful, physically, emotionally. Every fibre of my body at those what I call moment of impacts, those moments of loss. Every fibre of my body is moving in the wrong direction. It still is. And I have to get used to that feeling. And people are so scared of feeling these feelings that they come to people like me and say, help me with this feeling. I don't like it. I need to get rid of it. And sometimes in life, you have to sit with those feelings and go, okay, I'm just going to sit with that feeling.
If someone came to you in a professional context and said, I'm actually not scared. I feel brave because they did it, so I can do it. What would you say?
About death?
Yeah.
That was the first thing I said to Liana after she died. Thank you for showing me that you can do it because I'm no longer scared.
Wow.
Yeah.
And actually, Liana's death was very mechanical. She was on life support, and how they turn off life support, they don't pull a plug out of the wall. It's stopping adrenaline, which keeps the heart going.
Oh, I just learnt that just then. I literally always thought...
Do you literally think that some big bad bastard in a black outfit comes and goes, right, ladies and gentlemen, back off. We're just going to pull the emergency exit. And
I don't know.
No.
I suppose I always just in my head, yeah.
So with everyone running to plug it back in again.
Yeah, that always struck
the
me.
person in the bed.
Not very sensible at all. Yeah.
No. So for her, it was about stopping the adrenaline, which had been keeping her heart going. So it was a very mechanical thing. It was a very much, we have to look at those numbers up there on that screen, and that tells us when she's passed away. So we all spent the whole time going, oh God, the numbers are getting lower. I still felt that, because I'm a very spiritual person. Her energy had gone the day before. She'd gone the day before. We were just doing the mopping up the human bits, I think. She'd gone the day before, the night before. The energy in the room was very different. She was in control of it. But suddenly I realised that if my kid could do it, I could do it.
That's exactly how I felt when my mum passed away.
Yeah.
I was like, if you can do it. And I was terrified.
Absolutely.
I used to have trauma, like nightmares. And I'd wake up and I would run into my parents' room and be like, okay, you're still alive, you're okay.
People are petrified of dying.
Absolutely.
Petrified of
and
it.
Watching films on it.
Yeah.
Too young, probably.
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified. The thought of it.
And I think on films, death is portrayed as,
you
know, this is awful. Your life is being ended, or you're being drowned by somebody, or your death isn't necessarily like that, hopefully, for most people. Jason's death was the most beautiful experience I've ever had in my life. I felt that was his final gift to me, having had a mechanical death with Liana, although I think because I couldn't handle the fact my child has died, what I saw wasn't like, I always remember my mum saying to me, death is beautiful. And I'm thinking, that ain't beautiful. She don't look well.
No.
Dad's not, they don't like that. Don't want to be in this room. Freaky shit. Out I went. And everyone else was going in and out going, oh, she looks so beautiful and she's so peaceful. And I'm like, oh, she shouldn't be dead. And my body fought it. And I was the last one that went in to kiss her goodbye because that is what I'd chosen to do. But actually, here as I sit here now, 9.5 years later, I can honestly say to you, I can't remember what her face looked like lying on that bed because I have somehow blocked it out. Mm-hmm. I wish I hadn't, but I have. My dad was found by my husband Jay and my daughter Caitlin, so I wasn't part of that. I was working away, and they actually didn't really ever tell me what they found. I am aware of the situation, but they didn't. And other people have passed, but I've never been there. But what Jason gave me was the most extremely beautiful, peaceful, calm experience where I felt elated for him. God, that sounds really weird saying that.
But do you think you would have felt like that had you not have had that experience with Liana? Do you feel like that experience could have been different?
I probably, I guess because of the experiences I've had with death throughout my life, which started at the age of 7. My mum's brother, my beautiful uncle, my godfather, was sadly stabbed to death when I was 7. And I saw the chaos that caused. And as a 7-year-old, you know, obviously it upset me, but I saw the pain that it caused everybody else. And then you lose people throughout your life, and there's this pain that it causes, and you feel pain, and you're super aware of everyone feeling pain and crying and all of this stuff. I felt so at peace with Jay's death because he wasn't scared. His thoughts about death were, and he would openly say, death is freedom. He's like, I'm a free spirit. He always had felt that he would die young. Not just because the amount of unhealthy lifestyle choices he'd made in his youth, but probably due to that. He knew, Liana always knew she would not be here long. I always felt from a young age, I remember, and you may not keep this bit in because people might think I'm completely batshit crazy, but I've had the conversation with people before, and I'm happy to have it here. When Liana was very small, about 2 years old, she was cuppied down in my mum's garden picking daisies. And I remember thinking, oh, crap, why are you leaving? She's going to leave me. And I remember saying, she's going to leave. So when she got sick, I was like, she's going to die. And Jay would say to me, die. Don't, awful name to have when everyone you know is in hospital. Die. Terrible. I remember meeting Jay's last consultant when he was having CAR-T therapy in Bristol in February this year, and I got up and shook the doctor's hand and I said, die. And I went, very unfortunate name to have in a hospital situation. And the guy behind the curtain in the other bed's family were absolutely hysterical. So then I took on my name's Diana. I'm Diana, not Die. See, common denominator. Yeah. Jay's death was so exceptionally beautiful that it gave me peace, and I now understand what my mum had meant by death is beautiful. She'd obviously witnessed, other people passing, and she found it beautiful. So yes, I think it was helped by the fact that I had so much death in my life that I sort of knew the feeling. But, there was something that I read at Jason's funeral that is the only way to explain that. And it was something... can I get this out and read it?
Of course you can.
So I wrote a book. Can I just say that?
Oh, we'll plug. Yes, he did.
No, I don't know if I can find it. Hang fire. You asked me about the feeling and the piece about Jay's death, and I want to explain. And I wrote a passage in my book that I read at Jason's funeral, and I saw a piece written by Heidi Priebe online after Jay had died. And as I wrote here, when grief happens before death, I realised with both Liana and Jason that I had grieved for so long before either of them had actually died. In both experiences, I was grieving so much for so long during their illnesses that when they died, I already knew the feeling. It had already happened again and again and again. I saw a piece written by Heidi Priebe online after Jay had died, and I decided to include it in my eulogy to him, as no truer word was spoken. It was exactly what had happened. What I said was, you'll forgive me if I say this isn't the first funeral I have attended for him. To love someone long term and then watch them on a journey to peace is to attend 1,000 funerals of the person they used to be, the person they're too exhausted to be any longer, the person they don't recognise inside themselves anymore, the person they grew out of, the person they never ended up growing into. We so badly want the person we love to get their spark back when it burns out, to become speedily found when they are lost. But it is not our job to hold anyone accountable to the person they used to be. It is our job to travel with them between each version and to honour what emerges along the way. Sometimes it will be an even more luminescent flame. Sometimes it will be a flicker that disappears and temporarily floods the room with a perfect and necessary darkness.
That's amazing.
Jay, so many elements of Jay and Liana had died with those illnesses. Yeah. Like Jay didn't have, we had a bit of respite from the cancer for a couple of months a year ago, and we just got on a plane and went to the Dominican, and our friends from America flew out and met us there, which is what we've always done every year. We've met them somewhere, Mexico or the Caribbean or somewhere, and we just did it. And Jason already had a big lump back under his armpit because he had blood cancer, lymphoma. So he already had a massive lymph node. And there was this feeling that we knew what was coming, but the next scan wasn't till like 2 weeks after the holiday. So we got on a plane and we went. But I carried the suitcases. I watched his step as he got onto the plane. You know, nobody carried my bags for me anymore. And I drove the car to the airport. And yet that was always something that Jay did. Just stereotypically, he'd get in the car and drive and I'd sit there putting my face on, whatever. You know, and actually I took over so many little roles. I mean, he was always a lazy shit when it came to going to the bar on holiday. So I was always the one that trotted up there anyway. That was no different. But there were so many little parts of him that were dying each time. The part of him that had to go to the hotel room and have a rest for a couple of hours. You know, so there were all these deaths that were happening on that journey. So the final one, while it brought this catastrophic feeling of loss and fear and panic and I don't know if there are words, are there? It was a feeling that I understood already.
When you say deaths,
yeah.
So like it's like the
end of something.
The end of something,
yeah.
Or the preparation for something that you're going to have to do when they're not here.
Isn't that funny? Because when you just said that then, you've just completely seesawed what I thought it meant to actually all of those things that I was having to then take over and do were prepping me up to the fact, you're good.
I only say
no, but that's really interesting. You can go in the house now. We're just like, you know.
I only say that because when I look at the journey, and I'll say journey because it was a journey to my parents getting divorced and my mum passing away very suddenly. There was
I'm so sorry for your loss. What was her name?
Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Our relationship went just completely different. She met someone else. I didn't like him. And it was just like a whole new relationship. Mm-hmm. But now I'm grateful for that because I could do life without her. Yeah. And had we had the same relationship that we did when I was like 15, 16, and then she suddenly went,
it would have blown you apart.
Yeah. And I see that now as prep to
isn't
her leaving.
And isn't that a gift that she gave you?
Amazing.
Because the pain that I think you experience when relationships change, when people are unwell, I think sometimes if you can dive in to the relationship as a whole and do some of the repair work that you didn't do with that person yourself, because you're a big girl now, you get to make that choice. It's not even about, you know, whether your relationship with your mum was brilliant at the time that she died or not. It's about how you then move forward for the rest of your life and serve her memory well.
Absolutely. And seek peace in that.
Yeah. Ultimately. And I think that's a brave step to take. I think sometimes it can be really difficult. People get stuck in guilt, in anger, in, you know, lots of pain. People get stuck in those feelings. But I think it serves you well to be able to find a good from the negative. Yeah, definitely. And the fact you've done that, like, I'd give you a round of applause, but that would be a bit condescending on a podcast. Probably ruin the sound as well. But that takes a bigger person. Yeah. To be able to say, it's okay, Mum, I get it.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot. And I'm very spiritual as well. And I have to see that side. I wasn't even in the country when she passed away. I was in Thailand.
Okay.
Had I been around but had I been around this culture, I think, like you were saying earlier, where people are awkward around you, I wouldn't have coped with that. Yeah. However, the head teacher, I went back to work 2 days after because I was covering my sister's maternity. Okay.
Even ruder. But I had to go back to work.
Yeah. But I wanted to because of their culture and how they, even the email. Yeah. Please come in today. I would really just like to sit with this with you. In that moment. And the whole experience, there was no, I'm sorry for your loss. It was, what was she like? Did she look like you? Did she like music like you?
People are so scared to ask questions about the person that's died because they have a fear of upsetting you.
I'm so grateful for those conversations because I remember them and I didn't cry. I was like, oh, she is still like, and their approach to death was so different.
Jason used to say that someone doesn't die if you say their name out loud.
Yeah, I know.
That's why when someone says to me, I lost my mum, I lost my child, I lost my husband, the first thing I always say is, what was their name?
Yeah.
Because you say their name. I walk around my house all the time going, Jason Goddard. He doesn't materialise and make me tea in the morning anymore, but But actually, when people talk about Liana to me, or when people talk about Jason, even now, it's so necessary. Like, if you're worried about hurting somebody because talking about their loved one is going to upset them, believe me, you ain't got that power. Mm-mm. You couldn't say something to me about Liana or Jason or my dad or anybody that I've lost that would make me think, well, that's upset me. I'm already upset. I'm already a complete mess. Okay? You can't add to that. No. You can't do it. And that's empowering in a way. Yeah. But when people have the respect to continue the conversation about those loved ones, they're showing their emotional intelligence around death, because people often think that this is life. And we're going to get a spiritual conversation out of this now. That we're living this life and that death is an end. And I just think, like, we're here using these bodies on this journey to learning whatever we're here to learn. Clearly, I'm here to learn how to look after people before they die. But isn't it then that when we die, we really start living? That's a whole different podcast.
Yes, yes, it is.
But, my understanding of death and the spiritual connection I've had with those people that I've lost, and I mean bountiful spiritual energy, contact, communication, signs. Everyone's always looking for validation when they have lost a loved one, that they're still around you. Yeah. And you could give someone a bucket of validation every day. It's not enough. They always want more. Yeah. They're always looking out for stuff. But stuff happens. And that for me is even more validation, that people say we're a spirit inside a body. And I just think we're a body inside a spirit. That this spiritual energy we have is just on fire. This is just... We just waft into this life in these human bodies, and we get it so wrong. So wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to let you know, you're getting it wrong.
I suspected anyway. I assumed as much going in.
We'd heard about that. But isn't it great when people have the courage to say to you, tell me about your mum. What was her name? Yeah. Tell me about her journey. Because you're always thinking about these people. And the opportunity to talk about them. So I'm not Liana's mum just because she's died. I'm still her mum. She's still my child. Yeah. Don't block her out of my life by not bringing her up. Yeah. Then you're going to upset me and offend me. Yeah. People cross the street when you've lost a kid. I don't know if they do that when you've lost a parent. Nobody did that to me when I lost my dad. I don't believe I've actually given enough of a shit since Jay's died to even notice whether they've crossed the street. But people would cross the street when Liana has died because they didn't know what to say. And I sort of get that, but that's just bloody rude. Yeah. Even if you say, I'm so sorry Liana died, what a shit show. And you'd go, yeah, wasn't it? But it's hard to know what to say to people when they're grieving.
It was almost impossible, I would say, especially because you also have to define what your relationship going in is. You go, oh yeah, we last hung out like 2 years ago. Are we still friendly? Are we friendly enough that I can ask about this? Right. And then you have to, once you've worked that out, then you have to go, okay, now we've sussed out the relationship dynamic. Now what do I say?
But isn't it sad?
That's so as you're walking towards someone,
what do I do? Yeah. And then you get it wrong anyway because you open your mouth and a whole load of shit that you don't want to say comes out, and then they start crying. Yeah, but it's not because of what you said. I think we have to open up the floor for a conversation about death and grief and loss more. 100%. And that, honestly, I have to go down that journey now. I have to listen to these belly blows that have happened time and time and time again. I've lost half of my family, basically. I mean, when Liana died, when Jason and Caitlin and I were in a room, we used to have a saying, when we are 3, we are still 4. And then Caitlin said to me the other day, well, there's only 2 of us now, Mum. I mean, it's getting a bit desperate, But, so when we are now 2, apparently we've doubled up and we're 4. But we have to start talking about it. We have to stop this fear cycle of you should be able to walk up to anyone in the street and know what to say. And I get that it's tough, but believe me, it's tougher for the person who's grieving. And the worst thing you can say to somebody who's grieving is, let me know if you need anything. I don't even know what my fucking name is right now, let alone whether I have clean pants on, whether someone left flowers at my door, what the fuck day of the week it is, excuse my French. Please don't ask me what I need. You're adding to my list of things to do. Now I've got to sit and work out what I need. Yeah. Don't ask somebody what they need. Let me know if you need anything. Because they're never going to respond to you. They're never going to go, well, actually, in fact, can I share this with you? I've made really good friends with a lady. We haven't even met. We met on social media because I was part of a CAR T-cell therapy cancer treatment page for people going through it or their loved ones. And she had watched our journey, and Jason had CAR T therapy. It failed. The cancer was still there. I came off the page. He died 2 months later. She messaged me in September. What day is it? October. It's October now. She messaged me last month randomly. We're not friends on Facebook, and said, I hope you don't mind me messaging you. I followed your story on the CAR T-cell therapy page. I always used to be really grateful for what you'd posted. She said to me, my husband went through the same journey and he died on the 1st of September. So she reached out to me because she was like, I need someone to talk to that gets what I'm feeling, that isn't going to look at me like, oh, don't know what to say to her. So we had this conversation about the comedy of grief. Okay? And honestly, I think I laughed so much on this text message conversation. I screenshotted. Shitted. I shattered my screen. I shot my screen because I loved what she said so much, because I've had this conversation with my friends so many times. The comedy of grief, the way people completely fuck up around you when it comes to talking about death, when they say stuff and you're like, did you actually just say that? Okay. So her name's Stacia, and we had this conversation. I was like, oh, did you find this? And she's like, yeah, did you find this? This was the first day we were speaking. But such is the bond of understanding. Our husbands died. We've earned the right to have this conversation. So I'm going to share this with you. And I asked her if I could share this with you. She said, I've made a list of things I'm going to ask random people who say, do let me know if I can do anything for you, who have been utterly absent for the 4 years when I might actually have fucking needed them. The ones who would shit themselves if you actually did ask them for anything. Number 1, actually, I'd like you to buy me some Coco Chanel, please. That would help. Number 2, I've been meaning to paint my skirting boards. Could you do it? Number 3, I'd like you to write out 100 times, I am full of shit. Number 4, please drive to IKEA. I need storage boxes. Number 5, could you come over while I howl and possibly wet myself because I'm too sad to bother to go to the loo, and then could you clean me up? 6, please run my business, do it really well and for free for at least 3 months. And 7, please firebomb Virgin Media's bereavement centre because they hashed up really well. And we compared notes on some of the crazy ass things that people say. Hers were absolutely fantastic. A list of what not to say. Never say to someone who's grieving, let me know what I can do for you, because that person doesn't know what day of the week it is, let alone what they need.
Well, we should probably say then, what do you recommend saying? Because a lot of people's default is that they've got, oh shit, I've got nothing else to. What would you recommend?
Being really open and honest. I haven't got the words that I feel will do anything, so I'm just going to agree with you. This is really shit for you. Yeah. Actually rocking up with the bag of shopping and putting it on the doorstep and leaving it, ringing the bell and walking away. Or actually the communication that went on around me was really interesting, because people knew that my girlfriends were living with me, and literally, I don't think I knew they were there, but they were all there. Of course, I knew they were there. What a silly thing to say. But they were just, I'd forgotten how to make a cup of tea. So they made tea for everyone that visited and stuff like that. And actually, so many people were contacting my friends and saying, what do you need for Di? What can we do? And they were dealing with all of that.
That's good.
So actually, you know, what was it they say? If you've got nothing to say that's nice, then don't say it.
Yeah.
But actually, it is about saying the things that say, I know you're hurting and I am so incredibly sorry for your loss. I am thinking of you. You know, there's actually so many things that are helpful, but to sit with someone in their space and not ask anything of them. You know, what do you need from the shop? I literally couldn't tell you. I don't know where my kitchen is. I don't know if I've eaten in the last week. I might have done. I couldn't tell you. I genuinely couldn't tell you. I think sometimes grief is so overwhelming that actually it's better to just knock on someone's door and put a bag of shopping there, and whether they throw it out, eat it or what, I don't know, take the dog for a walk. Literally rock up and say, I've come to take the dog for a walk because I'm going for a walk and I want to hold you. The people walking into my home and just wrapping themselves around me and allowing me to howl like a dog, you know? I mean, at one point, I don't know. At one point, I realised how held I was. And I thanked God in my non-religious way that other people understood that functioning and breathing were all I could do. Nothing else was possible in that moment. And I don't know if that's because of the layers of grief from losing so many people, or I don't know if that's how everybody feels when they experience grief, but it was the relentlessness of it, to have lost person after person after person. But now, as I move forward, I understand that I can keep that legacy going, that I have now an opportunity to be able to help people and to be able to get this conversation going, because grief is goddamn lonely. Grief is the most isolating thing you can feel. You can be in a room full of 100 people and you will sit alone with your grief, because your grief for the same person that I'm grieving is completely different to my grief. And take a breath. But you know, it's the lack of community in grief. It's the lack of places to go with grief. You can ring the Samaritans or you can ring a bereavement group helpline, but that person can't take that grief away. It's something you've got to go through and process and experience. And the harder you try and shut it out, you know, as I said earlier, grief will wait for you. After Liana died, I went back to work 5 weeks later because I just went, I need to do something different and not be in this place of overwhelming grief. And I went back to work and it waited for me, because 14 months later, when her best friend was killed, down I went. And I was off work for months and months and months and months and months. Because grief waits for you.
So what you've done is you've written a book about grief and about your experiences with, and I think it is, I think the thing that strikes me is that what you are, even as obviously dreadful, it's also in an odd way, you're becoming an invaluable resource and place of comfort and knowledge for people, because you have been leveled with something that the majority of people wouldn't have survived. Yeah, the first grief, let alone the second or the third. A lot of people would have not have survived that, let alone have flourished in such a way that they can then use it to teach others how to sit with their grief and handle it, if handle's the right word. Go live with it, exist with it. So tell me about the book.
Well, I think as a hypnotherapist, I spend a lot of time saying to people, write it down. And the concept of writing something down is when it's down on paper, it's below you. it's movable. When we feel overwhelmed by anything in life, it's like this big weight above us, this big heavy burden that's bearing down on us. So I always say to people, flip it down, write it down, bring it down to a different space so that you can look down at those experiences, and then they're movable. So writing a book is a hypnotherapist's ultimate form of journaling. So when Liana died, her story was so ridiculous about how she got sick and what the heck happened in those 4.5 years, that someone said to me, like, you couldn't write it. You just literally couldn't write what that kid went through. And I had years ago worked in publishing. For 12 years I worked in publishing. So I could write a book, and I did know how to write a book. So I wrote her story.
It's on my bookshelf as we speak.
As you speak. Liana, her story, my words. Yeah, unbelievable. So I don't know if it's a form of therapy for me, this whole writing down stuff. I mean, I do grief counselling every Thursday morning, and I talk and I have this great support, but I have this need to get it out there, to put it out there on paper. So I wrote, this, How to Grieve a Life Interrupted, what I learned from losing my daughter, my dad and my husband all too soon, and how I held my shit together. And then I crossed out the word held, and in brackets I wrote, I'm trying to hold my shit together, because it's an ongoing thing. And I think it really is a form of, for me, a form of therapy, writing it down. But I think that you have a responsibility, if you have an opportunity in this life to have learnt stuff that you can help others with, in the same way that I would do that as a hypnotherapist, in the same way that I would help a friend, in the same way that I would help someone I didn't know in the street if they fell over. You know, if we don't learn from these experiences and come together and work together, then what the hell was that about? So I feel an overwhelming desire now to take what I now know and to move forward with it, which is a bit scary, because it's opening up a whole new arena for me to say, I want to help people with grief, whether that is sitting with them as they're dying, whether that is being with people's families, whether that is running, I'm going to be starting up a lot of different things in the coming months, but I've started doing a lot of work on my social path, which is called It's a Grief Thing, and I'm interacting with so many people every day. And people always said to me, as a hypnotherapist, you should niche in, you should just have one market. And I've always gone, no, I'll help anyone, I'll really help anyone. But I feel like I'm being niched in by life, okay? And now the conversations I'm having with people are mind-blowing. That people are looking at what you've written about how you feel. And I've got to be brutally honest when I talk online and when I talk in podcasts, and, you know, when I write my story, I have to be honest, because everybody is going to experience this at some time. And if something I write enables somebody, or something I say enables somebody to just receive a little comfort. Some of the message that I've had in the last few weeks since I've been moving in this grief arena have been mind-blowing. People just saying, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for saying what I feel, because I haven't got the courage to say it because people will think I'm nuts, whereas I know I'm nuts, so I'm no qualms about saying it. And actually, don't we have an opportunity here to open up and explore a whole area of life that's coming to all of us? People shouldn't be scared of something that happens to all of us. Yeah. But they are. But one breath at a time, each breath a little closer to death. I'm so sorry. That was absolutely not needed.
I'm going to need a drink as well.
Just one breath at a time. It's about, sitting with those feelings and removing the fear element. And then we come from a space of love. Life is a really good thing. I remember a couple of years ago, probably before Jay got cancer, so maybe 3 years ago, I remember being at a point in my life where I thought, oh my God, I've never been this happy. And I shouldn't be able to say that, having lost a child, having had all these experiences with pain and grief and loss, and I was the happiest I'd ever been. And I plan on getting to that place again, because life is good. And what grief is this grief that I feel right now for my husband, this is my love. It has nowhere to go. I'm trying to find a place for my love for him to go. So I'm just trying to find a new normal.
Yeah.
And I'm still pissed off with him that he left.
Yeah.
But there we go.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's understandable. And like I was saying, the point I was making was essentially just that it's very lucky that you have the wherewithal, the self-awareness, the strength, what do you call it? Stubbornness?
Stupidity.
Whatever it is that you've got. A lot of people are already and will be very thankful that you have those qualities so that you can help spare them more pain than is necessary, probably. So you are the one who, what's that saying? God gives his toughest battles and all that sort of stuff to his toughest soldiers. And it might, it's transpired that it's you. And
you have two options, don't you? If you want me to go to bed for 6 months and be crazy, crying and wailing and thrashing, I do wailing and thrashing quite regularly. Okay, it petrifies the life out of me. When I'm having those deep, dark cries that I'm making a noise that I remember after Liana died, making a noise and thinking, what the hell is that noise in the room? And then realizing it was me. Yeah. And I make those bloody noises. Sometimes I cry so much it scares me. Okay, but I don't always cry. And what I'm learning now is that when you have those cries, just go with them. Just understand that they are part of this overwhelming feeling that grief has over all of us. And you can try and pack it away in a neat little box and pretend it's okay, but that tends to be when people start to use alcohol or food or drugs or bad relationships.
That's what I was going to say. Because, and this is why you're right when you say that we need to get much better at talking about death and grief. Because I've only ever experienced one kind of grief, and it's self-destructive and ugly. Yeah. Whereas whether it's me drinking drug binges for years or just deliberately getting into fights, that's the only kind of grief I'm familiar with. So which is why I've always been very impressed with you, because it's rare.
Why, thank you.
But it's true.
I'm not sure my head will fit out the garage door now.
But it's true, and it's necessary.
The studio door now.
Because there's a lot of people who will have the exact same experience with and not know that there's another way to talk about grief. Other than, oh, fuck it, I'll drink today, I'll drink tomorrow, and then eventually I'll drink the fucking agony away.
Hey, look, I use food to change my mood. That's why I'm, 20 pound heavier than I should be. I mean, that was quite a small amount of weight. I'm probably about 30 pound heavier than I should be. But I use food to change my mood. It's something I've done all of my life. I understand that concept. I've never tried drugs because I would become a drug addict. I'm not very good with alcohol because I would be an alcoholic. I know my limits and my boundaries. Food is the one that I sort of get away with, and every now and then I tidy it up and I eat healthy for a while. But it's a thing that we are always looking for an outlet for our pains, whether they are pains through loss or pains through any sort of loss, job loss, relationship loss, anything we lose. We're so scared of losing. We have this big fear of loss, of things leaving us, of things going away. And actually, you have to be able to sit in your own space, she says, having probably eaten too much today, and understand that nothing is forever. Nothing. And that if you can sit with death and loss and understand that it is the most natural part of life, and for somebody that believes nothing, like when we die, that's it, end of life, we're extinct, whatever, I challenge you on that, because I'm very spiritual, and maybe that helps me with my understanding of grief and loss because of the interactions and energy and things that have happened for me with those people that have passed from a very young age. So my spirituality helps me. But even if my spirituality is a load of bullshit and completely wrong, I'm okay with that. It's getting me through. Okay? I'm not going to live in fear about something I can't control, because I'm super aware of how much power that has over me. So if you give power to something that you can't even control, and I promise you can't control, you can be as healthy as you want to be. I grew up with a friend whose dad was a marathon runner and dropped dead of a heart attack in his 40s. I mean, there's only so much you can control. So if you just loosen that need to control and understand that there is this space in life for death, then it's about the quality of life that you have when you're here. It's about the forgiveness, the love, the getting out of bed and going back downstairs and sitting with your husband and holding him and remembering his smell. I use a face cream every morning that I used to put on Liana's face when she was on life support. And every morning I smell my daughter. And she's right there in that moment. Because you can take away my kid, but you can't take away my memories. You can take my husband, but you can't take the love. And I'm not strong, but I choose not to be petrified. Sometimes I'm pretty fucking petrified. This afternoon, I was sat with a friend of mine in my lounge. This is the second time I've put my makeup on today because I cried it off because I was so lonely. And I was sat with her and I was lonely. I miss Jay so incredibly every time my heart beats. And I will spend the rest of my life wishing that he was in the room, that Liana was in the room, but they're not. Yeah. And it doesn't mean I never cry. It doesn't mean I can deal with it. I'm really strong. I'm not strong, but I will not live in fear.
I think those two things might just amount to the same thing, because I think I've seen a lot of very capable, very smart people succumb to that grief and fear, and so much so that I'm very frightened of it as a result. But then I don't know whether you scare me or make me feel more. I don't know what you make. I always have, but this happened fucking last time we spoke as well.
Okay.
I always have to take 24 hours
to process.
Yeah.
Should I have her back again?
Christ, how do I feel about that conversation? But
That's
in
good
a
though,
good
because
way.
you're thinking.
But you're thinking, and that's exactly the point of it.
But sometimes it's nice because you go, well, because you are, in this arena, you are a role model of, if she can do it, then maybe if something like that would happen, maybe I could do it. However, you are also, like you said earlier, also a reminder that these things are very real and possible, which is very scary, and so, but then
So then that depicts how you choose to live your life. And I mean live your life. Because when I laugh, good God, you can hear it across the oval.
Yeah.
I laugh and I'm filled with joy. My energy is good because I choose to be joyful. I choose to find the good in people and things. There are lots of shit things in life, and I can't. My biggest bugbear is when people are, oh, woe me, my life is awful. Oh, I just can't cope. Oh, I'm just and I just think, good God, come on. You've got this life, this opportunity to live it. Get your head out your arse and live it, because in a minute, it's all going to go poof.
Yeah, I do feel sorry for the people that are like that around me, because I'm just like,
get on with it.
That's when my empathy brain switches off, and I'm just like,
and it's hard because you feel like life is more valuable when you've lost so much.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the culture that we live in, and this is a cultural thing, your fear of death and passing and leaving is a cultural thing. It's not your fault. It's not. It's a cultural thing that we've lived in for generations, and other cultures don't live like that.
No.
Yeah.
And so, they have open casket funerals where they see the dead person. I didn't know until when I was in America 2 weeks ago with our friends that we were talking about the funeral for Jason, and they found it difficult because they were in America and they webcammed in and they watched it there. They would have come, but Jason would have said, no, please don't, don't put that much pressure on yourself. So they watched it online, but they didn't get to see him because they have, where in their community, an open casket funeral home practice. And I'm like, ooh, meh, I didn't want to see that. But to them, that's normal.
Yeah.
So what is your normal is the issue. Because we do this thing now where we're like, oh, no, don't want to look at that. Oh, no, don't want to see death. Yeah. Oh, no, that's scary. No, it's not. In some cultures, it's absolutely celebrated.
Yeah.
The person's gone to an amazing place. What you experienced in Thailand.
Amazing.
Like life-changing.
Yeah. So grateful as well.
Yeah.
So grateful.
Yeah. The energy is different when you have an acceptance of death. And if we don't change this culture, then all these people, honestly, so many of my clients, I ask the question all the time of all people I meet, what's your biggest fear? And some people say spiders. And I go, that's great, we can deal with that.
Yeah.
Most people say death. And if you fear death, then you're living in fear. Because, as I said at the beginning of the conversation, and I will remind you in a timely fashion, we're all dying.
Yeah.
And we just don't believe it.
Yeah.
We choose to go, it's all right, I'll just pop that over there because right now I just want to eat this cake and not think about it. And I'm in the middle of a row with my husband, or I'm just doing that and I'm screaming at my kids as they walk down the street. And actually, if we just become more aware of the ever-moving fluidity of life, then don't we become better, more grateful? I love, what does it they say? Love a person who has grief, because they will love you because they appreciate the value of everything in life. You know, always, if you're going to love somebody, pick somebody who is grieving, because they will make you feel amazing. I mean, some of them will just be miserable shits, but some of them will just drag you down a real negative journey. But actually, if you lean in to grief and loss and death, you know, growing old is a privilege denied to many. And the reason the book is called How to Grieve a Life Interrupted is because the celebrant that ran Jason's service said that when she runs funeral celebrations, services for people, she always thinks that when someone's aged, 80s, 90s, that they've lived a full life. And she tends to say they've lived a full life. And she said to me, when people are younger, I always feel that their life has been interrupted. And I just felt healed when I heard her say those words. Because Jay's life was interrupted. Liana's life was interrupted. It's continuing somewhere else now.
So
Well,
beautiful.
Yes, yeah.
Exceptional.
Yeah, I really do treasure your
morbidity.
insight here. Yeah, I do a little bit. I do, because I do. It's just, it's not very. It's a rare thing to be able to tap into and explore, and so your honesty here is very valuable, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anything? Where can people find you online? Where do you want people to go most of all?
If you just go to It's a Grief Thing, because it's a grief thing is my motto in life. You can also find me at Goddard Hypnotherapy. So
It's a grief thing. Is that like Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah,
is that the website?
yeah. My Instagram handle, my social handle is It's a Grief Thing, but each word has like a full stop in between it. So
Right, I see.
it's it just made it easier to visualize that that's what it says, rather than It's a Grief Thing.
It's a grief thing.
It's a
Yeah,
grief
right.
thing.
It's a grief thing.
And I'm going to be collaborating with a really good friend of mine. Collaborating, that sounds a bit nice, doesn't it? That we are going to be setting up a CIC together, a community interest company. And we're going to start really pushing out now and reaching people and holding online groups and safe spaces for people who want to talk about grief and loss and raising awareness and honestly, I'm so excited about the next few months coming up. I've got all these projects that are coming into that grief arena, and I'm all in. If that is maybe the reason that I'm doing it is because it gives me a reason for all that shit that just happened, and then I can go, yeah, this is why it happened. I was meant to help people. Yeah. You know, but I think if you have all those experiences and you don't then help other people, that just makes you a bit of a knob. Yeah.
But
I'm not one of them.
I would say that's probably the norm, is to just wallow in it and try and kill it, bury it, or
that
put it somewhere
petrifies
else.
me. Honestly, the wallowing in it, I can do a certain amount of crying and then I just feel really ill. I'm really ugly crier. It makes me want to eat more food, and it feels like crap.
Well, maybe those things are a God-given instinct that propel you towards doing this thing that's going to help people. So,
but ultimately, it's you know, selfishly, it's healing for me to talk about it. I think people want to talk about their loved ones. They want to talk about their grief. I think they're so messed up. We're also messed up with our grief and our fear and our pain that actually talking about it, but it's just not a British thing, is it, to talk about anything? So if we can start talking about it, then guess what? Healing happens right now.
Oh, that's a very nice tagline. That's a very nice.
So
You're a
good.
pro. Yeah. Well, no.
Yeah.
Well, listen. I've really enjoyed talking to you about this, and if I'm only putting a bow on it because if it went any longer, I want to release this.
You'll be scheduled die by the time it comes out.
We might never see the light of day. But I want to get this out on the same day I release the Joe Exotic episode, because that's going to be our biggest ever episode, and this one can catch the tailwind off the back of that, you see.
Cool.
So if I get it longer, it's going to take me 3 days to edit it. So I want to make sure we've got some nice, concise, beautiful.
We've got some.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't have a life. I'll come back and do this any day, so don't worry.
Hey, I'm literally always in here. I'm either in here
All right.
or in there with
Or
them.
in there.
So yeah.
No.
But
just live a good life and take all of that fear and that pain and that grief and talk about it. Because by talking about it, we open ourselves up to endless possibilities.
Yeah.
And say their name. Someone doesn't die if you say their name. Lisa.
I think you die.
Thank you,
so
Steve.
much.
Thanks, Lissy.
And Lizzie, thank you as well. Damn
I
fine.
know, she asked much better questions than you did.
Hey, I taught her
You
everything
cried
she
a
knows.
lot. She held her shit together.
Hey, I brought these people together.
I know,
I
right?
saw the potential.
And I'm so
You cried.
grateful. Thank you for asking me to come on, because
That's okay. Yeah.
I've received so much comfort from you talking
Good.
about your experiences. So thank you.
Thank you
And
for
thank
sharing.
you. I'm so grateful.
That's right.
Hi.
See, you could have been sat opposite Kevin or George. Totally different episode. Then.
Completely different. That would have gone wrong on every level.
Yeah,
I'd have had all these crying blokes in the room.
Yeah,
I'd have been like, do you know what, guys?
Kev
yeah.
would never let you get a word in edgeways anyway. So it'd have been a 4-hour podcast probably.
Would
So
have
it's,
No,
yeah.
thank you. It's been
it's
really
my
helpful.
pleasure.